Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into a city where stone temples breathe in moonlight and every shadow seems to hold a story. Imagine standing at the edge of a wide stairway, each step worn smooth by centuries of feet, your bare toes just brushing the cool surface. Above you, the moon hangs low and bright, painting the temple walls in silver and the air with a faint shimmer. The night is quiet enough to hear your own heartbeat, until a distant flute cuts through, a slow, lilting sound that makes you pause mid-step. Somewhere out there, a story is waiting for you. But here's the truth. In the Aztec capital, you probably won't survive long if you ignore what the stars are trying to say. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, post your location and local time in the comments. I want to know where in the world you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You walk upward slowly, one hand grazing the carved stone railing, tracing spirals and jaguars worn pale from touch. The air smells faintly of burning copal incense drifting from somewhere above, its sweet resinous smoke curling around your ankles like mist. Halfway up you stop, not because you're tired, but because you swear you hear whispers. They come from the direction of the moon, or maybe from the cracks in the stone, voices so soft they could be your imagination, or the night's. Below, Tenochtitlan spreads wide, its canals gleaming like threads of molten silver. Small canoes drift along them, carrying quiet figures and bundles of goods. Even now, well past the market's peak hours, the city is alive. Dogs barking from distant courtyards, soft laughter spilling from a balcony, the splash of water against the pilings. You take another step, the sound echoing faintly. The stairs seem taller than they looked from below. Here's one of those grounded truths. Historians agree the Aztecs built their great temples in layers, one on top of another, each new ruler adding height and grandeur. But here's the curious part. Some believe older structures still lie sealed inside, like nesting dolls of stone, holding rooms no one has seen in hundreds of years. Historians still argue whether any of those hidden chambers were deliberately locked away for spiritual reasons or just buried by time. At the top, the plaza is lit by braziers, their flames licking the cool night air. The heat from them brushes your cheeks as you step onto the wide platform, and the city's noise feels far away now, like it's wrapped in a layer of velvet. Priests in feathered headdresses move silently between shadows, their robes catching the light with flashes of red, green, and gold. The moon looks close enough to touch, balanced right above the tallest spire. You drift toward the edge to look down at the causeways cutting across the lake, glowing faintly under the moon. The water is still, mirroring the sky so perfectly that it's hard to tell where one ends and the other begins. For a moment, you feel suspended between two worlds. Above you, constellations fixed in place. Below you, constellations trembling on the water's surface. If you lean just a little farther, you might fall into the sky itself. A cool wind lifts the hem of your tunic and tugs playfully at your hair. Somewhere behind you, a laugh, quick, light, gone before you can turn. You catch only the briefest glimpse of movement, a small figure darting behind one of the stone pillars. You can't see her face, but something about the way she moves, light-footed like she belongs here, tugs at your curiosity. And because you're you, curiosity wins. You cross the plaza slowly, weaving between flickering shadows and the sharp scent of burning resin until you reach the pillar. There's no one there now, just a small woven pouch lying at its base. You crouch, pick it up, and find it's filled with something soft like crushed petals. You bring it to your nose, jasmine maybe? And a strange image flashes behind your eyes, a sky littered with unfamiliar stars. A priest passes by and glances at you, expression unreadable, as if deciding whether you've just stumbled into something meant for you or something you'd be better off forgetting. You slip the small pouch into your belt, its faint perfume following you as you wander toward the far side of the plaza. The temple's edges are lined with stone balustrades, their tops cool to the touch, their sides carved with endless rows of glyphs, each a frozen fragment of a story. Some look like animals mid-leap, others are spirals, suns, or jagged lines that might be mountains. You run your fingers over one, feeling its grooves like the wrinkles of an ancient face. The moonlight slides across the surface, catching in tiny chips of obsidian still embedded in the stone. A low hum begins to rise, not from the plaza but from below, somewhere in the belly of the temple. It's not a human sound, nor entirely mechanical. It feels more like a deep vibration that resonates through your bones. You step closer to a set of steps descending into darkness, half hidden behind a row of torchlit columns. Two guards stand at the top, their spears crossed, their feathered cloaks swaying slightly in the night breeze. One glances at you, eyes narrowing, not in hostility, but in the way someone might appraise a stranger who doesn't yet know the rules of the place. You back away slowly, letting the shadows reclaim the stairwell and circle toward the center of the plaza. A priest is kneeling there before a low altar, feeding the flames with something that crackles and pops. You catch the sharp scent of herbs, sage perhaps, mixed with something richer, almost metallic. He chants softly, words spilling like water over stone, and for a moment you think you can understand them. Not in your own language, but in the strange way that meaning sometimes leaps straight into the mind, bypassing words altogether. The phrases feel like an invitation or a warning, maybe both. Beyond the altar, a narrow causeway stretches into the night, leading to another platform that floats like an island in the sea of rooftops. You make your way across, the wooden planks beneath your feet creaking faintly, the city sounds fading into a soft blur. Halfway across, you pause. Below you, the water is so still that the stars look like they've sunk into it. Somewhere out there, a faint ripple moves toward you, slow, deliberate. It disappears before reaching the causeway, as though it slipped beneath the surface. On the far platform, you find a circle of low stone seats around a basin filled with dark water. The air here is heavier, cooler, the faint scent of flowers lingering without any visible source. You kneel and peer into the basin, expecting to see your reflection. Instead, the water shows a city that isn't quite this one. Taller towers, different symbols etched into the walls, fires burning in places that are cold now. A hand touches your shoulder and you jerk back, heart pounding. It's a young woman, her hair braided and threaded with small jade beads. She wears a tunic the color of midnight and looks at you without speaking, her gaze steady and calm. In her other hand, she holds a clay disc etched with spirals, offering it to you as if it were always meant to be in your possession. The instant you take it, the air feels charged, the way it does just before a storm. The hum you heard earlier returns, closer now, rising from somewhere under your feet. The water in the basin trembles, distorting the image of the other city until it breaks apart entirely. The woman steps back, nods once, and vanishes into the shadows between two pillars. You're left standing with the disc warm in your palm, the pattern of spirals almost pulsing under your fingertips. Somewhere deep inside the temple, something answers with a pulse of its own. The city unfolds before you like a tapestry woven in moonlight and fire. Every step takes you deeper into its living heartbeat, the shuffle of sandals on stone, the low murmur of merchants packing away their goods, the occasional burst of laughter that drifts across the night air. Torches sway in the gentle breeze, their flames casting shifting patterns over walls painted with gods, serpents, and celestial signs. You pass under an archway carved with jaguars in mid-leap, their stone eyes catching glints of light as though alive. Beyond the arch, a market square lies in half shadow. The stalls are covered now, the goods wrapped in woven cloth, but you can still smell their traces: sweet cacao, roasted maize, the sharp tang of obsidian freshly chipped into blades. A pair of children dart across the square, chasing a rolling hoop, their laughter echoing against the walls. They vanish into an alley, leaving you alone with the quiet pulse of the city's after hours. You follow the sound of trickling water and find a narrow canal, its surface reflecting the sky so perfectly that it feels as though you're walking between two heavens. Flat-bottomed boats are tied along the edge, their prows painted in bright reds and blues. An elderly boatman sits cross-legged on the dock, whittling something small from a piece of bone. He glances up at you, his gaze lingering on the clay disc you carry. Without a word, he gestures toward the far bank and taps twice on the dock's wooden post. You step into his boat, the wood creaking softly under your weight. He pushes off with a long pole, guiding you silently across the water. The air grows cooler in the canal's center, carrying the scent of lilies and something older, like rain on sun-baked earth. When you reach the opposite bank, he nods once and waits as you step ashore. Behind you, the boat drifts back into the mist as if pulled by an unseen current. A narrow street leads you upward, its stones uneven, worn smooth by countless feet. The walls here are higher, their surfaces covered with intricate mosaics that shimmer faintly under the torchlight. You pause before one, an image of a great bird soaring over mountains, its wings made of tiny stones in shades of gold and midnight blue. The pattern of its feathers stirs something in you, as though you've seen it before, though you can't place where or when. At the street's end stands a building unlike the others, round, with a domed roof pierced by a single opening at the top. Inside, the air is cool and heavy, and the walls are marked with lines and dots that spiral toward the ceiling. In the center sits a low stone table, and upon it rests a bowl filled with fine white powder. Beside the bowl, an open codex lies waiting, its pages painted with constellations and creatures that seem to move ever so slightly when you're not looking directly at them. A figure emerges from the shadows, a man draped in a robe stitched with tiny beads that catch the light like stars. His eyes are sharp yet calm, and when he speaks, his voice carries the rhythm of distant thunder. He tells you the girl you saw has been dreaming of the stars for many nights, her visions clearer than any scribe's record. He gestures toward the opening in the roof, where the sky is framed perfectly, as if the building itself was built to cradle the heavens. Then he leans closer, his gaze locked on yours, and says, "She will need you when the sky door opens." The domed room breathes with steady quiet, as if each stone learned long ago how to listen. The elder in bead-bright robes settles beside the low table and rubs a pinch of the white powder between finger and thumb. "Ground shell," he murmurs, letting it snow across the surface until the table looks like a small, pale night. With a reed, he sketches quick dots, lines, a curve that becomes a serpent's back. "Her dream began like this," he says, and you feel the air lean closer. You keep your voice low. "What did she see?" "Not pictures," he answers, drawing a tight cluster of points. "Speech made of light." He taps the cluster, 7 small dots that could be sparks caught midair. "She said they gathered, scattered, gathered again, as if counting and then agreeing." You recognize the 7, the Pleiades, those small needles of brightness that stitch the sky's shoulder. The elder nods, as if he heard your thought. "They moved 3 times, then the city's roof shone as if the lake had climbed up to live among us." He turns the reed, draws a long path from the eastern rim of the powder field to the center, and sets a single dot at the end. "Here," he says. The morning star waited and did not blink. Venus, bright, punctual, dramatic, in a way that would make most theater kids jealous. A mainstream fact lands softly between you. Aztec priests carefully tracked Venus's cycle, timing ceremonies and omens by its risings and settings. The planet's appearances filled codices with tables and warnings. "She said the morning star paused too long," the elder adds, as if listening for her. The reed hovers. He draws a square, the city, then 3 causeways like fingers pointing into the lake. In her dream she stood on the great causeway, and every torch turned to fireflies at once, as if the night decided to practice handwriting. He smiles at his own image, and you can't help a small grin. Even sacred visions appreciate good lighting. He reaches for a shallow bowl of water, tips a bead onto the powder field so it darkens in a tiny circle. Then the sky door opened. He doesn't dramatize the phrase, he sets it down like a cup where it won't spill. She says it felt like the moment before rain, pressure turning into permission. You weigh the clay disc in your palm, its spiral warming as if it's been eavesdropping. "How do you know it wasn't just a dream?" The elder's eyes flick to the round hole in the roof. Black, patient, exact. "Because she woke with dust on her hands," he says. "This dust." He brushes what remains of the powder into the bowl, a small snowfall returning to earth. "Because she named the hour before dawn by smell alone." He inhales, nods toward the door. "Copal, lilies, and the lake deciding to be generous." He shrugs lightly. "And because when she speaks, the room behaves." You want to ask what behaves means, but the floor answers first with a faint tremor, the kind you might blame on wind if there were any. The reed quivers. The elder stills it with 2 fingers and gives you a look that says, "Exactly." He opens the codex beside the table. Painted pages glow with constellations, stitched by red line, creatures swimming through dark fields like ideas passing through a crowded market. He taps a page where a rabbit crouches in a circle, moon and story sharing an outline. She heard a tale as a child, he says, that a rabbit was flung to the moon so no one would forget kindness. Your mouth tips into a smile. Some myths are so good the sky keeps them as decor. The elder's tone is amused but firm. Kindness governs more than you think. He turns another page. Here, the Pleiades hang at the top of the world, a fire below them flaring into a starburst. He doesn't need to explain. A widely accepted fact settles between you. Every 52 years, the Aztecs marked the new fire ceremony. When the Pleiades reached the zenith at midnight, a sacred fire was rekindled to renew the cosmos, and households relit their hearths from that flame. In her dream, the elder says, the Pleiades did not pass. They hovered over the heart of the sky. The fire below waited, patient as a drum. You ask softer now, what do the priests think? Some say omen. Some say hunger. He gestures toward the powder field where the points still gleam. Some say a bright dream from a bright mind. He lets the reed rest. Historians still argue whether dreamers like her were given official roles or treated like weather, noticed but not scheduled. His mouth quirks. We tend to schedule the weather anyway. A footfall in the doorway. The girl is there, small and sure, moonlight caught in the jade beads braided through her hair. She steps into the dome and looks up through the roof opening, as if checking whether the sky remembered to bring itself. When she speaks, her voice is level, not mystical at all. It will come again, she says, when the water smells of stone. You glance at the bowl. The elder tips it, so a thin sheen slides across the powder. The room cools by 1 polite degree. You think of the lake wind that carries a mineral breath, the way it rises just before dawn. Stone smell, you echo, and she nods once. Agreement signed, briefly. Tell me the rest, you ask her, because curiosity has already confessed it runs your days. She kneels at the table and doesn't touch the reed. Instead, she closes her eyes and hums a note barely above silence. The powder lifts in the smallest shiver, lines of dots blurring then settling. You stare, because the powder should not do that. And yet it has. She opens her eyes again, unbothered by your surprise. Perhaps that too is scheduled. The stars spoke, she says simply. Not with words, with the space between them. She points, not to a dot, but to a gap shaped like a crooked tooth. There, she whispers, they opened like a jaw. You try not to remember how often you've lost keys in gaps and corners. The universe favors cupboards you can't quite reach. Did they call your name? You ask gently. They asked a question, she replies, the one that makes your stomach float. She moves her hand from chest to throat to brow. They asked whether we would step. You let the silence be a chair everyone sits in for a while. The elder clears his throat. Not everyone loves steps, he says dryly, especially when they go up and also nowhere. He taps the codex where a figure climbs a ladder into a star field, skirts belling like a small, brave cloud. Quirky rumor, he adds with a sideways smile. Some say obsidian mirrors sing when the sky door opens, like a kettle about to boil. I've never heard it myself. He spreads his hands. But I have listened hard enough to make water jealous. You grin despite yourself. Tea with the cosmos sounds inconveniently loud. Below the humor, the room steadies around a shared idea. Something is coming, and it has a timetable nobody wrote. The girl's gaze returns to the roof's circle. When it comes, she says, the Milky Way will lie across the city like a sash, and the wind will forget to move for 3 heartbeats. She counts them with 2 fingers and a thumb against her own wrist. Your pulse tries to follow, trips politely, then catches up. You feel the clay disc warming in your palm again, as if the spiral wants to be a path rather than a picture. What do you need from me? You ask, because it seems like the sort of question the stars would appreciate on a form. She thinks for a moment, then answers with a simplicity that lands like a bell ringing once. To notice, she lifts her chin, and to stand where the gap opens. Reasonably, you ask, where is that? Where water and roof meet, she says, already halfway turned toward the door. Where the city is 2 skies. The elder rises, joints clicking like small bead abacuses. Night is a good negotiator, he says. Let it arrange the introduction. He gestures you along. There is a place where the lake forgets which side of the world it's on. As you step into the warm dark, you glance back one last time. The powder field still holds its map. The reed lies where it was set. Yet the tiny dots through the roof, real stars, not shells, seem closer than before, as if they too have taken one small step. You could swear the room tilts, not enough to make you stumble, just enough to convince your balance the world likes a joke. Outside, the causeway gleams like a pale spine stretching toward the horizon. The girl moves ahead, sure-footed, a comet with modesty. Somewhere a drum tries out a thoughtful rhythm and stops, as if deciding to save its opinions. You breathe in, copal, lilies, the whisper of wet stone. The sky doesn't speak words. It waits, generous as a doorway. The lake lies ahead like a spilled mirror, edges folding into the dark. Lantern light from passing canoes flickers, warping the reflections into long, thin serpents that coil and vanish. The girl stops at the water's lip, where stone steps descend into a liquid that smells faintly of minerals and lilies. She crouches, dipping her hand so the surface shivers without breaking. "You said this is where the city becomes two skies," you remind her. She nods. One above, one below, and in between. She presses her wet palm against the stone wall beside her, leaving a print that glistens for a moment before the air drinks it away. Is where the step might open. You let your gaze drift upward. The night has cleared to a depth that feels infinite, the Milky Way stretching like a woven sash stitched with silver seed beads. The causeway behind you is silent, the hum of the marketplace now just a memory pressed flat against your ears. In the quiet, you think of a fact tucked into a corner of your mind. The Aztecs often aligned their ceremonial spaces with celestial events, treating water and architecture as twin instruments for echoing the heavens. This place, where causeway meets lake, could be such an instrument. The elder joins you, his pace unhurried, robes whispering against the stone. He sets a shallow bowl on the steps, scoops water into it, and waits for the ripples to settle. In the bowl's surface, the stars rearrange themselves, not exactly wrong, but not quite how they appear overhead. You lean closer. "They move," you say. "They answer," the elder corrects, voice like a hinge turning. But only in the shape of the question you bring. He tips the bowl slightly toward you, and the reflection tilts too, revealing a gap in the starfield like a small, careful tear in cloth. The girl kneels beside the bowl and places the clay disc over it. The spiral etched into the clay catches the reflected starlight and spins it inward, slow at first. Then with a pull you can feel in your chest. The water doesn't spill, though by all rights it should. You're not sure whether to blame skill, faith, or the universe's fondness for stagecraft. "What happens if we step?" you ask, the word tasting of both curiosity and risk. The girl's answer is quiet. You arrive where your shadow already stands. You frown. "And where is that?" "Closer than you like, farther than you believe," she says, without looking away from the spiral. A breeze lifts across the lake, carrying the scent of wet stone, exactly as she foretold in the dome. 3 heartbeats later, the air stills entirely, the quiet so complete you can hear the faint shift of water against its own weight. The gap in the reflected stars widens, no longer a tear but a doorway, dark and deliberate. The elder doesn't speak. His hand rests lightly on the girl's shoulder, an anchor more than a guide. Your pulse ticks in your throat, matching the slow spin of the clay spiral. You realize that whatever question you carry now will decide what waits beyond that dark. The girl glances at you finally. If you are not ready, the door will know. You open your mouth to answer, and stop. Because in the water's reflection, your figure stands in the gap already, facing you, its features shadowed, but its stance certain. And for a moment, you think you see it lift a hand in invitation. The reflection doesn't shiver when you blink. That shadow, you remain standing in the doorway of missing stars, the stillness around it thick enough to muffle even the lake's tiny sighs. The girl doesn't look at you. Her eyes are locked on the spiral, as though any stray glance might let the doorway collapse. The elder tilts his head toward the water. "Step with the foot you do not favor," he murmurs, as if giving directions to a dance you've never learned. You test your weight between your feet. Your less favored one feels heavier, almost reluctant, like it already knows where this is going. You think about the simple, grounded fact that the Aztecs often wove left-right symbolism into their rituals, the left side linked to the moon, the night, the inward journey. Not exactly reassuring, but it fits the mood like a key that wasn't meant for your lock, yet turns anyway. As you lean forward, the world tilts. Not dramatically, just enough for your stomach to notice. A gust brushes your back, carrying a scent of maize dough baking somewhere far, far away. You nearly laugh at the absurdity. Either someone's making tamales at midnight, or your senses are rifling through memories for comfort food before they let you cross. "Don't follow smells," the girl says without looking up. "They're tricksters." The surface of the lake hums. No sound, just a vibration under your skin, like a bass note someone forgot to switch off. And then, without fanfare, the doorway swallows the shadow you. The gap is empty again. The elder lifts the clay disc, breaking the reflection. Water sloshes in a way that says, "Show's over, folks." He dries the disc on his sleeve, inspecting the spiral as though searching for hairline cracks. "Sometimes," he says, "the meeting happens without you noticing. Sometimes it waits until you sleep." Oh. The girl finally looks at you, and there's a spark of mischief in her eyes. Or sometimes you've been standing there all along. Historians still argue whether moments like this, visions, shared dreams, were private imagination or sanctioned parts of Aztec religious life. A fringe belief even claims that some initiates lived entire second lives in these reflections, only returning when their other self had learned something vital. You're not sure which camp you belong to, but your pulse is convinced something just happened. The elder gestures toward the far side of the lake, where reeds sway like they're whispering secrets to each other. "We walk now," he says. "Why?" you ask, still half in the water's grip. "Because doors rarely open in the same place twice," the girl answers, already on the steps. You follow, and for a moment, the lake seems to lean after you, as if curious whether you'll come back. You can't tell if that's comforting or not. You follow the elder and the girl along the lake's rim, until the city gathers itself again in streets and low courtyards. Lanterns sway on cords, nudged by a breeze that smells faintly of lilies and ink. At the end of a narrow lane, a doorway waits without announcing itself. Plain lintel, plain stone, the architectural equivalent of a whisper. The elder raps softly, then slides a wooden latch aside. The door gives with a sigh like a page exhaling. Inside, the temperature drops a few polite degrees. You step into a long room banded with shelves, each stacked with folded screen folds of bark paper and deerskin, codices asleep in their own accordions. Lamps glow in clay niches. A scribe looks up, reed pen poised mid-breath, and offers the universal librarian expression that says, "Yes, you may enter," and "No, you may not be loud, crunchy, or flammable." You nod, promising to keep your personality on its lowest setting. The girl walks straight to a shelf you would have missed and taps the edge of a dark bundle wrapped in faded cotton. The scribe hesitates, glances at the elder, and receives a small nod that feels like a key turning. He lifts the bundle with two hands and sets it on a low table smoothed by years of elbows and secrets. Unwrapped, the codex inside gleams dully. Pages coated with gesso, the surface meant to hold color like a sky holds light. When the first panel opens, the room tilts toward it. You lean in and see what you expected. Bands of red and black, gods stepping between day signs. But then the familiar grammar becomes other. The star maps cover whole panels, not just Venus's stepping stone path, but clusters plotted on grids like nets, lines arcing through constellations you don't recognize. The drawings are so fine, you feel yourself squint from the inside. Mainstream history says Aztec and other Mesoamerican codices charted celestial cycles with impressive rigor: the 260-day sacred count, the 365-day solar year, and above all, Venus tables used to time ceremonies and watch for ominous risings and settings. Here, though, the marks extend beyond known cycles, tiny white dots scattered over indigo, joined by hair-thin threads that spiral inward toward painted mouths, as if the sky itself is speaking in constellations of syllables. The elder touches the margin, careful not to trespass on paint. "Kept in shadow," he murmurs, "because too many voices tried to speak through it at once." He points to a column of glyphs crowded into the gutter, day signs stacked like careful bricks, then a sudden break, a painted tear that divides the sequence in two. The scribe explains in a whisper, "Only senior readers are allowed to handle this codex. It is said to reply. Your eyebrows attempt escape." Reply how? Sometimes with a smell, sometimes with a draft, the scribe says, with the earnestness of someone who has had his hair lifted by invisible commentary. Once it made the lamps flicker when a reader lied. He's either teasing you or reporting office culture. You decide to accept both. The girl slides a finger along a panel bordered in blue. The pigment holds like a calm lake, that legendary mixture we call Maya blue, stubborn against time. In the center, a rabbit sits in a moon disk, ears tilted toward a twisting band of white dots that could be the Milky Way or the path of an idea learning to walk. A small golden glyph nearby is shaped like an ear. Listening, she says simply. A quirky rumor from the scribe arrives like a sparrow. Some say the pigment on this page contains powdered shells and a pinch of chili to discourage pests, and possibly reckless licking. You fight the urge to ask if that last problem is common. The elder's side-eye suggests it is more common than the priesthood prefers. Historians still argue whether these defensive recipes ever included spicy deterrents or if that's just scribal humor that aged exquisitely. You turn another panel. A grid appears, 4 squares for the directions, 13 ticks along the edge for the levels of heaven, and within them, star groups sketched as if seen through water. A black path threads the grid like a serpent unsure if it's a road. In its coils, small discs painted with tiny spirals, the twin of the clay one warming your palm. You look down. Your spiral feels suddenly heavier, as if it recognizes family. What is this, you ask? A way of asking where the sky becomes a place, the elder says, and where a person becomes a question. He points to a small figure painted at the grid's edge, 1 foot lifted, the other planted on a day sign that reads like read or road. They called this panel a posture, not a map. From the corner, the scribe coughs softly. There is a note, he says, and directs your eye to a miniature glyph tucked under a flap, a rabbit scratched by a different hand, lines wobblier, perhaps added later by a mischievous apprentice. Next to it, 3 tiny dots stand apart from any constellation. We don't know why, he admits. Some think it's a scribe's signature in disguise. Some say it marks nights when dreams arrive early. Historians still argue whether marginalia like this had sanctioned meanings or were the ancient equivalent of doodling in the margins when a lecture ran long. You pause over a panel showing an eclipse. A jaguar mouth closes over a sun disk while lines of tiny people lift paper banners and blow conch shells. The scene is dynamic but restrained, the way a city holds its breath together. A fact settles. In central Mexico, eclipses were tracked, feared, and ritualized. People rang bells, made noise, and watched the sun's edge for the return of light. Here, though, the artist has painted a detail you haven't seen before. A ladder leaning against darkness, with footprints going up and none coming down. You and the elder exchange a look that contains too many questions to count. A draft slips through the room. Lamps answer with a synchronized tremble. The scribe doesn't react. Apparently that's Tuesday. The girl lifts her face, eyes bright as if she hears something far away and polite. Not yet, she tells the air, and the flame nearest you steadies like a trained dog settling. If stars need better PR, this codex is their press kit. The elder turns a final panel. There, a city floats on blue squares, lake tiles painted with the glossy patience of a chessboard. 3 causeways extend like careful fingers. Above the center, white dots form an open mouth, the gap the girl named, and from it descends a filament of paint so thin it could be a hair, connecting sky to water to a small roof marked with a glyph for house and another for reed place. Where roof and water meet, you say, breath misplacing itself temporarily. He nods. The observatory by the Reed Wharf, he says, naming a place you haven't yet visited but already know you will. The scribe adds, slightly apologetic, that it is technically closed after moonrise, which is librarian for, please don't make me be the reason rules exist. Light jokes arrive, softly spaced by the lamplight. You ask whether the codex has a late return fee. The scribe assures you the fee is eternal disapproval and 2 extra festivals of shelving. The elder says disapproval builds character. The girl suggests you stop while your character still fits through doorways. The room grants the laugh without smudging the air. You rest your fingers just shy of the edge, feeling the small warmth radiating from paint and possibility. Who made this, you ask, and why hide it? The scribe folds the cotton gently over one corner, as if tucking a child. Some say a circle of star readers compiled it over many seasons, he whispers. Others say it arrived whole from a city swallowed by water. His eyes flick to the door. And some say it remembers futures that make loud people nervous. Historians still argue whether codices like this were common and lost, rare and guarded, or partially imagined by later copyists who tried to reconstruct dangerous knowledge with safer metaphors. The room keeps its poker face. The elder closes the last panel with ritual care. Enough for now, he says, not unkindly. Maps are generous until they're not. He gestures toward the door, where the knight waits with the patience of a lake. The scribe rewraps the codex and returns it to its unassuming shelf. The bundle looks like any other, the whole trick of secrets. As you step back into the lane, the city exhales warm air and cooking smoke, the brightness of lamps painting slow gold across the stones. The girl tilts her head toward the east, where the lake meets the lines of roofs. Where the roof listens to water, she says, we wait for the mouth to open. You tuck the clay spiral inside your belt, where it sits like a quiet comet. Overhead, the Milky Way has edged a finger closer to the ridge of houses. A breeze presses your sleeve and then thinks better of it. Somewhere behind you, a lamp flickers. A codex's goodbye in Morse you don't quite know how to read. You walk, and with every step the stars arrange themselves into the shape of a question with your footprints as punctuation. The path curls away from the codex room into streets that climb, step by step, toward the hill at the city's back. The elder walks as if each turn is a word in a sentence only he can read. The girl keeps pace, her gaze roving rooftops and sky at once. You trail them past walls streaked with moonlight and vines that spill down like polite intrusions. Somewhere, a musician tests a flute. The sound bends around corners, soft as steam. Halfway up the hill, the houses fall away to a broad terrace paved with slabs the size of doorways. Here the city exhales, making space for what comes next. At the terrace's far edge, a low structure rises, square, tiered, its plaster whitened to catch even a hint of starlight. Not a temple exactly, but something kin to one. The Reed Wharf Observatory, the place the codex promised in paint. A gate stands open. Beyond it, a court holds a scattering of stelae, each carved with loops and bars, calendars and stories in stone. A few show weathered faces with eyes like commas, paused mid-thought. The air carries a faint mineral coolness, the smell of rock and calculation. The elder pauses by one stela, tracing a date with his fingertip. Last time this star vanished, he says, the lake froze around the fish pens. His tone holds neither alarm nor nostalgia, just the kind of balance you use when carrying a bowl full of water. Historical records suggest central Mexican lakes rarely froze, but in highland winters during unusual cold spells, ice might form at the edges. Whether this memory is literal or symbolic, you can't quite decide. Steps lead upward into the observatory itself, a narrow chamber open to the sky through a slit cut precisely between roof stones. Inside, shadows fold against the walls, except where moonlight slips in and spills across the floor in a neat rectangle. The girl kneels by it, running her palm along the edge as if checking a seam. Not yet, she murmurs. The elder explains. At certain nights in certain seasons, the moon or a star will pass exactly through the slit, landing its light in the center of that rectangle. The codex uses these alignments to anchor its calendars, not as guesses, but as conversations between stone and sky. Archaeologists debate whether such slits served purely astronomical functions, or if they also guided ritual performances in which light's arrival triggered music, offerings, or political announcements. Here, the air feels like it would approve of all three. On a ledge sits a shallow bowl of water. The surface trembles faintly, though no wind reaches it. You lean over and find the moon doubled there, real above, reflected below, both caught in the same breath. Beside the bowl lies a small obsidian disk, its edge chipped to form notches. The elder says it was used to track intervals between appearances, a portable archive of the sky's rhythm. Such tools, found at various Mesoamerican sites, still puzzle historians. Were they personal calendars, teaching aids, or ceremonial instruments? The absence of labels is part of their charm and their menace. The girl rises, her eyes fixed on the slit. It begins. The moon slides toward the opening, its light sharpening like a blade finding a scabbard. When it touches the floor's center, the rectangle becomes a door of brightness. In that moment, the spiral in your belt warms again. Not heat, but a pulse, like a heartbeat remembering its job. A low sound hums through the stones, deep enough to feel in your ribs. You glance at the elder, but he's watching the light as if reading a long-awaited letter. The hum resolves into a pattern. 2 notes, a pause, 2 more. Whether it's wind in the masonry or some trick of resonance, the room accepts it as intentional. The moonlight elongates, brushing the far wall where faint red pigment lingers, a line of glyphs barely surviving centuries of weather and disinterest. The elder's voice lowers to match them. When the mouth opens, the listener will step in. His eyes flick to you just briefly, as if to check your shoe size for prophecy. The glow recedes. The hum subsides to a memory. Outside, the terrace lies silvered, each stone edged with shadow like ink around a glyph. The girl steps ahead, her silhouette crossing the slabs in quiet punctuation. At the gate, the elder rests his hand on the frame. Some nights, the light strikes another wall, he says, one we haven't opened yet. He doesn't smile when he says it. Some part of you knows that wall is not metaphor and also not entirely stone. As you descend toward the lake, the city resumes around you. Smells of cooking, calls across courtyards, the shuffle of baskets set down for the night. Overhead, the Milky Way has inched past its highest arc, spilling into the west. The clay spiral at your side feels steady now, as if satisfied with this step in its invisible itinerary. Down by the reed wharf, water laps the pilings with small, polite applause. You pause there, the girl and elder flanking you like quotation marks around an unspoken sentence. Somewhere behind you, the observatory keeps its slit aimed at whatever tomorrow will bring through it. You step away from the reed wharf and follow the girl through a narrow alley that seems determined to fold in on itself. The air is cooler here, shadow pooling between walls. Every few paces, a niche holds a clay figure, some human, some animal, some undecided, its eyes painted black and fixed forward, as if waiting for a parade that's centuries late. The elder lags behind, muttering in Nahuatl too softly for you to catch. His staff taps stone in a patient rhythm, as though measuring something invisible. When you glance back, you notice he's staring not at you or the girl, but upward, toward a faint shimmer where the alley's mouth meets the sky. You emerge onto a small plaza paved in mosaics, spirals, feathers, and geometric waves in turquoise and ochre. A low platform dominates one side, its base ringed with carvings of the night sky, constellations rendered as jaguars, serpents, and rabbits. A known historical fact, many Mesoamerican cultures track the cycles of Venus with meticulous care, often linking its appearances and disappearances to political or ritual events. Here, the planet is cut in stone, surrounded by dancers frozen mid-step. The girl hops onto the platform, toes the edge like testing a diving board. They used to tell stories here, she says, stories that made the stars answer back. You're not sure whether she means this literally or poetically. In this city, both seem equally plausible. She gestures toward a wall behind the platform. At first glance, it's just more plaster, flaked and pale. But as your eyes adjust, you catch it. Faint red lines, forming a shape like a stairway into the sky. The elder joins you, running his finger along the lines. Some say it's a map of a journey after death, he murmurs. Others say it's the path the first singer took to bring the stars down. Historians still argue whether such imagery in Aztec and Maya contexts was meant as literal cosmology, theatrical stage direction, or mnemonic for oral traditions. The absence of accompanying text keeps the debate alive. You imagine a conference where scholars wave their arms over this very design, each certain they're right, each leaving unconvinced. The girl interrupts your thoughts by producing a small pouch from her sash. She unties it and spills a handful of black seeds into her palm. They're glossy, almost metallic under the torchlight. They listen, she says simply, before scattering them across the mosaic. The seeds bounce, some landing in the spiral grooves. The elder kneels, places his ear near the stones. You follow suit, feeling more than hearing a faint vibration, like the memory of distant drums. Could be echo from some other plaza, could be an elaborate prank. Or, given where you are, maybe the plaza itself is playing along. A quirky tidbit. Some modern researchers experimenting with ancient plazas have found that certain layouts naturally amplify and distort sound, allowing a whisper at one end to be heard clearly at the other. Whether intentional design or happy accident, it blurs the line between engineering and enchantment. The girl looks toward the sky. Above, the stars have sharpened in the cool air, each one an unblinking bead on dark fabric. She names a few in Nahuatl, her voice lifting like small kites. Citlalicu, the star-skirted one. Tlahuizcalpantecutli, Lord of the Dawn. You spot Orion's belt, but here it's 3 hearthstones in a cosmic kitchen. Tomorrow, the elder says, Venus will rise in the east before the sun. We will be here when it does. There's no room in his tone for questioning, though it doesn't form in your mind. You linger in the plaza, the seed pattern glinting faintly under starlight. Somewhere beyond the walls, the city murmurs in sleep mode, footsteps on wood, the occasional bark of a dog with unresolved opinions. The mosaic beneath you feels oddly warm, as if holding on to the day's sun in defiance of night. The girl leaps down from the platform and takes the lead again, her pace quickening as if the route ahead is a song she knows by heart. You follow, the elder trailing, and the plaza remains behind, its seeds, its whispers, its map to somewhere nobody agrees on, waiting for Venus to keep its appointment. You circle back toward the temple district along a street that narrows with every turn, as if the city is guiding you into a thought it doesn't want to say too loudly. The girl moves ahead, unhurried but precise, counting doorways under her breath. The elder's staff keeps a slow pulse behind you, a walking metronome with excellent posture. When you reach a blank wall of stone, she stops, presses her palm to a particular block, and waits. Nothing happens for a full heartbeat, and then a seam loosens just enough for a breath of cool air to slip out. Inside, she says, and the wall yields like a book that knows you're the reader it's been saving itself for. Darkness greets you with the friendliness of a thick blanket. You step forward carefully. The elder touches your elbow and guides your hand to the right, where the wall's plaster is smoother, as if countless fingers have learned the same path. The opening closes behind you with the softest click, a polite reminder that this is not a revolving door. Don't worry, the girl calls from somewhere ahead, voice low. There's room for the dark and you. It's comforting in the way a good joke is, half truth, half dare. You let your breath lengthen until it stops trying to echo. A thread of light appears, thin as a drawn hair, running along the floor at knee height. The girl must be shielding a small lamp because the glow never flares, just widens enough to sketch edges. A passage slanting down, walls painted with faded reds and blacks, the ghost of glyphs that used to speak in brighter ink. Your sandals find a steady rhythm on the packed earth, the kind of sound you'd record if you were trying to teach someone what hush looks like. Mainstream fact steadies your steps. Many Mesoamerican temples contained interior chambers, substructures, or rebuilt layers, older sanctuaries entombed beneath newer ones. Archaeologists at the Templo Mayor in Tenochtitlan uncovered superimposed phases, each ruler adding height and enclosing what came before. Hidden rooms were not unusual, sacred places liked to keep their earlier selves close. Down here, history feels less like a timeline and more like a stack of breaths. The air changes from dry to cool damp, the stone smell the girl mentioned before. You brush the wall, and your fingers return with a fine dust, gritty and faintly sweet, like crushed shells in time. The elder murmurs, copal dust, then adds, and a little chalk, with the satisfaction of a chef identifying flavors in a stew. Your stomach answers with optimism. You remind it this tour does not come with snacks. It sulks, but quietly. The passage opens into a chamber that doesn't announce itself so much as arrive. The lamp's covered glow softens the edges, a low ceiling supported by square pillars, niches cut into the walls at shoulder height, a shallow ramp leading down toward a darker mouth. The girl uncovers the flame just enough to paint a honey-colored puddle on the floor. This way, she says, and the flame nods along like a well-trained goldfish. On the nearest pillar, a painted scene hangs on, stubborn as a legend. A figure holding a mirror of night, a band of white dots across its surface like a river. The elder taps the rim. Milky Way as road, he whispers. Mirror as boat. He tilts his head toward the dark mouth. We may be passengers for a little while. You clear your throat. Round trip ticket, I hope. If you've packed your patience, the girl says over her shoulder, that's the fare. She lifts the lamp and the dots on the painted mirror wink as if they approve of your credit. At the room's center, a low stone basin collects moisture that drips from somewhere above in irregular, unhurried notes. The surface holds a small map of the ceiling, trembling gently. When the girl's lamp passes over it, the reflection fractures, then reknits, a miniature rehearsal for larger alignments. She sets the lamp on a ledge and shows you the trick, cupping her hands around the flame to cast a narrow ribbon of light across the water. In that ribbon, the ceiling glyphs appear doubled, and a gap, one absent symbol, floats where a star should be. The sky door, you say. The sign for it, she corrects. Doors aren't fond of being pinned. Your quirky tidbit arrives from the elder, who produces from a pouch a tiny whistle shaped like a cricket. Found dozens of these in Old Phil, he says, demonstrating a breath that yields a tone so soft you feel it more in your fingers than your ears. Some say they were used to call the right echo from the stones. Others say they kept mice confused during long vigils. He shrugs. Either way, you don't want an overconfident mouse in a ceremony. You manage a straight face for 3 seconds before laughing into your sleeve, which seems the correct etiquette for subterranean humor. Historians still argue whether such whistles were ritual instruments, toys, or pocket-sized acoustical tests. The chamber offers no comment beyond a contented resonance. The girl dims the lamp again until the only light is a diluted moonwash trickling from 2 finger-wide shafts high in the wall. The shafts slant like careful thoughts and deliver just enough night to turn the chamber into a soft sketch of itself. Listen, she says. At first, you hear only breathing. Hers, the elder's, your own, 3 threads weaving a single rope. Then another sound separates, the faintest rub, like stone smoothing stone. Not movement exactly, more like readiness practicing its posture. The hair on your arms considers its options, decides to be professional, and stands politely. You stand at the room's keel, imagining the mirror boat lifting off its painted pillar and skimming through the dark mouth ahead. The elder places the clay spiral in the basin's rim groove, where it fits as if the stone waited to be properly accessorized. He turns it a fraction. The reflected gap in the ceiling glyphs slides to the basin's center and holds. Somewhere beyond the chamber, a distant drum tries 3 gentle heartbeats and stops, as if reminding the world where to put the next moment. You swallow, and the sound is comically loud inside your head. The girl doesn't mind. She smiles, almost amused, then sets her palm on the basin's lip. Step? You whisper, remembering the lake and your shadow's invitation. Not with feet, she says, with attention. She nods at the dark mouth. Follow my voice. She walks into the passage without the lamp, and her words float back, round and unafraid. Here, she says, a little farther. Here, again, a little softer. You move after the sound, hands grazing the wall, each stone a bead you count without counting. The elder's staff finds the floor's edge before your toes do. He bumps it lightly against your ankle, a grandfatherly mind the stare. You don't argue. The passage takes a gentle bend. Air flows cooler, tasting faintly of minerals and old flowers, the kind pressed between book pages for so long they forget their names and remember their scents. You think, not for the first time tonight, the time down here refuses to behave like a line. It prefers spirals, detours, loops that arrive where they began with new shoes. You enter a second chamber, no basin this time, just a smooth floor and a ceiling low enough to encourage good posture. The girl hums a single pitch. The room replies with a faint harmony, as if agreeing to be her instrument. She brings the lamp forward at last, setting it in a niche where the flame can do geometry. Shadows assemble into a pattern of ribs along the walls. Between 2 ribs, a depression forms a shallow doorway, the kind that looks like it might open if you remembered the right story. Through there, she says, is the unlit part. This wasn't the unlit part, you ask, because your definition of brightness needs more friends. She grins. That was the hello. Mainstream scholarship notes that certain interior passages appear to be designed for controlled darkness, spaces where light enters in calculated slivers or not at all, guiding perception and timing. Some archaeologists propose that initiates learned routes by touch and sound, not sight, training the senses to accept guidance without panic. Historians still argue whether such spaces were purely ceremonial or doubled as secure storage for sacred objects and records. Standing here, you can imagine both, a vault for meaning and a school for stillness. You rest your fingers on the doorway's cool edge. The stone feels faintly damp like breath on glass. If we go through, you ask, what are we supposed to see? Maybe nothing, the girl says gently. Maybe the shape of nothing. Maybe the sound of where stars aren't. She touches your wrist. Maybe the place your question becomes a room. It's not an answer designed to put anyone at ease, but somehow it works. You exhale. The elder adjusts his grip on the staff, the gesture of someone who has led people into dark rooms and back out again more times than the floor can count. She lifts the lamp, then lowers it until only a ring of glow survives, hugging the wick like a collar. Keep a hand to the wall, she says. When you feel it smooth, that means the path is thinking of you. You nod, filing that under instructions you didn't expect today. Together, you step into the unlit part, guided by her voice and the soft scrape of your palm along stone. The darkness settles around your shoulders like a shawl that knows your size. Somewhere far above, the city turns a page. Somewhere farther, Venus rehearses a bright entrance no one will sleep through. Down here, you and the night walk until your question grows legs. The darkness thins in layers, like smoke deciding to be air again. Your palm slides along stone that has traded grit for polish, and the floor cools underfoot the way water cools a thought. The girl's voice stays just ahead of you, a quiet thread until she stops and the thread gathers into a knot of stillness. The elder moves beside you, staff lifted so it won't clink. Even his caution seems designed not to wake the room. You feel it before you see it, a temperature that leans cooler, a hush that feels round instead of flat, a smell like minerals with a memory of rain. Then, the lamp's ringed glow finds the lip of a pool, and the dark answers with light. The ceiling appears all at once in the water, ribs of rock and the faintest dust drifting across a second wetter sky. The lamp is small, but the pool is very good at sharing. The girl kneels and cups her hand on the surface. She doesn't press, just rests her palm until the skin learns the lake's grammar. Don't hurry, don't brag, don't be sharp. When she lifts away, the reflection barely trembles. Stars in the water, she says, though all you see above is stone. Then your eyes adjust, and there they are, not overhead but underneath. Pinpricks of light scattered across the pool's black page, shifting when you breathe, steady when you don't. You lean in, expecting some trick with lamps and shafts, but no beam touches the surface. The elder whispers, "Old light," and gestures toward two thin slits far behind you, angled so cleverly that they answer the sky without admitting the outdoors. The route is long, the light is tired, and yet here it is, still punctual. Mainstream fact steadies the marvel. Mesoamerican priests often used reflective surfaces, bowls of still water or polished obsidian, to observe the heavens in time rituals. Water mirror watching is older than most calendars and just as stubborn about being right. The pool widens into shadow. Its rim is low enough to sit and high enough to respect. Carved into the stone around it run small channels like the veins in a leaf. When the elder lets a few drops from the lamp's melted fat fall in, the ripples run their roots and vanish, as if the pool prefers its reflections unwrinkled. "The room likes good manners," he murmurs. You try to sit politely. Your knees pop in a way that suggests they have not received the memo. You try a joke to see if the chamber accepts humor. "So this is night mode for the sky?" The girl smiles without looking up. "And low power," she says. The elder adds, "No notifications." The pool approves by continuing to be exactly itself. You study the lights below. At first they mimic familiar patterns, a crooked belt, a faint spoon, but then the arrangement warps as if the pool is not reflecting the sky so much as negotiating with it. The girl touches the clay spiral to the rim, aligning its groove with a shallow notch. The lights nudge into a spiral of their own, not perfectly, but enough to make your skin register the coincidence. Pattern talking to pattern, like neighbors discussing fences. "Do they always move?" you ask. "They answer questions," she says. "Some nights they answer with silence." The elder nods toward the water. "Tonight they're chatty." The lights collect near the pool's center and thin at the edge, leaving a gap shaped like a doorway with very polite corners. Your breath forgets to be ordinary for a beat. Quirky tidbit, offered by the elder as if sharing a family recipe. Some attendants swear a pinch of flower pollen settles the surface. Others whisper you should rub the rim with a cut lime. He spreads his hands. I prefer patience. It doesn't get sticky. Historians still argue whether tricks like these were ritual prescriptions, practical hacks, or later storyteller seasoning. The pool withholds comment, which feels very on brand for water. You notice faint lines scratched around the rim. Not glyphs, not decoration, more like tally marks smoothed by fingers. Counts? You ask. Weights, the elder answers. Nights when the water remembered better than the sky. He says it without apology, and somehow the star mirror doesn't take offense. The girl hums a pitch you recognize from the earlier chambers. The pool deepens, visually at least, and the lights seem to sink a little, as if obeying the note. A practical part of your mind tries to assign the effect to your pupils, your focus, the microwaves from your own breath. It files a report, plausible. The rest of you leans in anyway. If skepticism wore slippers, it would be walking softly here. You glance up at the stone ceiling. No stars, only the faint chalk of fossil shells, tight spirals pressed into the rock ages before temples and markets. Sea rock, the elder says, a city built in a lake beneath a fossil sea, looking for the sky in a pool. He chuckles. We stack our metaphors deep. E.D. Breyer. Mainstream history nods along. The basin of Mexico was once covered by great lakes. Tenochtitlan rose on an island. Building with lakebed stone meant living with water's old stories under your feet. Across the pool, a shallow niche holds small offerings, shells, a jade bead, the dried spine of a fish laid like a comb. The girl adds one black seed from her pouch, a twin to those she scattered in the mosaic plaza, and it floats for a long moment before choosing a quiet place to sink. The lights below gather near it briefly, as if greeting a guest, then drift apart again. Could this be astronomy, you ask, or just very polite magic? Polite is a good beginning for both, the elder replies. We measure, then we bow. He taps the rim with a fingernail, a sound so soft it barely qualifies as a sound. The nearest lights quiver. He nods, satisfied. See? Respect and an index finger often suffice. You try to keep your voice smooth. What are we asking? The same question as the codex, the girl says. Where does the sky touch the road? Her second finger traces the spiral, not turning it, only reminding it that spirals are invitations, not traps. The gap of darkness widens, its edges clearing until you could imagine stepping through without wetting your ankles. Your humor, ever helpful, whispers that your laundry would appreciate that. She leans forward, hair spilling like ink. If we stand where roof and water meet, the door will know us, she says, but it is also here. She taps the pool's edge, then her own chest. Doors are fond of company. From somewhere beyond, a faint rumble agrees to be thunder later. The room does not flinch. Your thoughts sculpt themselves into quieter shapes than usual. Even your metaphors have taken off their shoes. For a few beats, nobody speaks. The pool steadies so completely you can hear a small drop land and decide it's not worth starting ripples over. Then, the elder offers another small oddity. When I was young, I saw a turtle climb onto this rim and look down, very solemn, a witness from below perhaps, or just curious. His smile acknowledges both options. Historians still argue whether turtles symbolize the Earth's back, the slow clock of the world, or simply good soup in the wrong hands. Tonight, the turtle is a librarian. It showed up and made no noise. You notice a hair-thin crack running from the rim to the floor, dark with moisture. A trickle gathers there and feeds a narrow runnel that disappears under a low stone. Overflow, the elder says, so what isn't needed knows where to go. You think, not entirely joking, that many meetings could use such plumbing. The girl draws a breath and lets it out slowly. It will answer once more, she says. Listen for the part of silence that means yes. You did not realize silence came in varieties until tonight, but you nod as if you were expecting a catalog. The yes arrives like a pause that remembers to glow. The lights tilt into a curve that points toward the pool's far edge, toward a shallow arch in the wall you had mistaken for a shadow. The arch hums without noise. The stone around it becomes attentive. You look down and see your reflection step neatly to that edge, as if your shadow were already rehearsed. Your feet stay where they are. Your mouth opens, then decides to keep the peace. The elder places 2 fingers on your wrist, grounding the drum there. The girl speaks barely above thinking. Tomorrow, when the planet opens the morning, we go to the plaza with the stair on the wall. Venus, dawn, the platform of dancers. The map assembles itself from your evening like a patient puzzle. You nod, slow enough to keep the stars from sloshing. Take a last look, she says. Water keeps secrets, but it appreciates goodbyes. You bend and see the lights relax, the gap slim to a slit, the pool resume its ordinary miracle of being water. You thank it, out loud because manners are free, and the tiniest ripple lifts like a bow. On the way out, the elder cups his palm, scoops nothing, and sets that nothing back with ceremony. For the part of the sky that will be tired later, he says. Your laugh arrives on tiptoe and leaves no footprints. At the threshold, you turn. The chamber is already folding itself into hush. The pool keeps its stars, the fossils keep their shells, and the slits keep their appointment with any patient light. You step back into the corridor, and the darkness meets you like a friend who knows when to stop talking. The corridor bends and drops as though the stone itself is leaning to watch where you place your feet. A pulse of cooler air greets you halfway down, not a breeze, but the suggestion that some wider space is breathing below. The elder's staff clicks once against the floor, and he stops to listen, head tilted. Hollow under hollow, he murmurs, as if complimenting the architecture. The girl runs her fingers along the wall, tracing a vein of quartz that glints like a hidden constellation under the lamp's reach. Soon, the passage opens into a chamber you might have mistaken for the bottom of a dried well, except the ceiling isn't sky. It's a circle of carved stone blocks, each one painted with a different phase of the moon. The designs are worn, but you can still see crescents, halves, and the full face, some overlaid with fine red lines like compass markings. You notice that a small gap between 2 blocks lets in a faint spill of nightlight, filtered pale and clean. In the center stands a low circular platform, no higher than your knee, made from a single slab of black volcanic stone. Its surface is polished to the point where it holds the lamplight in a shallow pool, reflecting you and the others in muted gold. The elder gestures for you to kneel, not in reverence, but to see more closely. Carved into the stone's surface is a map, not of land or water, but of cycles. Concentric rings mark lunar months, tiny grooves indicate eclipses, and a spiral winds inward toward a point that glimmers faintly with inlaid shell. This is where they taught the sky's handwriting, the elder says. Each mark is a word in a language that only changes when the moon forgets to show up. His tone is half serious, half in love with the joke. Mainstream archaeology agrees that Mesoamerican priest astronomers recorded lunar cycles with meticulous accuracy, linking them to agricultural rituals, festivals, and even political events. But here, the precision feels more like storytelling than calculation. The girl takes the clay spiral from her pouch again and sets it in the outermost ring. It fits perfectly, as if made for this place. She rotates it slowly, and the inlaid grooves catch the lamp's glow in sequence, like a fuse lighting in both directions at once. They didn't just watch the moon, she says. They rehearsed it so the earth would know its part. Around the edge of the platform, small niches hold offerings, bundles of feathers, bits of obsidian blade, a folded scrap of bark paper painted with the faint outline of a rabbit, the rabbit in the moon, a figure still alive in many stories across the Americas. You reach toward the paper, but the elder raises a hand. Old agreements stay where they were signed. You pull your hand back, oddly relieved. Quirky note, one niche holds a single perfectly round stone, the size of a child's fist, painted half white, half black. The girl explains that on certain nights, the priests would toss this stone between their hands while chanting, to embody the moon's passing from light to shadow and back again. The practice sounds almost playful, but it was meant to keep human memory in step with the heavens. Your gaze wanders up to the painted ceiling again, and you notice that one of the moon phases is missing, not scraped away, but replaced with a smooth, unpainted block. What happened there, you ask? The elder shrugs. Maybe a message. Maybe a dare. The girl leans in. Or maybe they were waiting for a night that hasn't happened yet. The platform's spiral stops turning under her fingers. The lamplight pools in the center, and for a heartbeat, the inlaid shell seems to glow from within. The elder lowers his voice. "We will return here after the plaza. The moon will want to see what we've learned." You glance toward the corridor you came from. Its darkness feels different now, not an end, but a pause between sentences. You step back from the platform, careful not to let your shadow fall across the inlaid rings. Even without moving, you can feel the pull of the spiral, the way it makes stillness feel like motion held in trust. When you leave, the painted moons overhead seem to tilt ever so slightly, as if taking note of your departure. Somewhere above, the night sky keeps its own copy of the script, waiting to compare versions. You emerge from the lunar chamber into a narrower hall that bends sharply, like a question mark someone etched into the earth. The walls here are bare, the air warmer, and the floor feels slightly springy under your steps, not soft, but with a faint give, as though it rests over something hollow. The elder taps the ground with his staff twice, listens, then grins. Plaza floor's close. It likes to keep its secrets in the subfloor, where the ants gossip. The girl walks ahead, her clay spiral tucked under her arm now, and you follow until the passage widens into an arched doorway. Beyond it, you find yourself in an open plaza under the night sky, framed by the silhouettes of stepped temples. The stones underfoot are laid in a perfect grid, and their edges catch the silver light like a mosaic designed by the moon itself. In the plaza's center, there's a circular depression, ringed with low stone benches. At first glance, it looks like an amphitheater, but the elder explains it's a ceremonial dance ground. Historical accounts confirm that Aztec plazas were more than marketplaces. They were stages for public rituals, seasonal festivals, and political gatherings, often aligning with astronomical events. Here, the space feels tuned for both sound and sight. You notice how even a soft scrape of your sandal echoes back with a subtle musical resonance. The girl steps into the depression and spins slowly, her gaze lifting to a star cluster overhead. "When you dance here, you're not moving alone," she says. "The stones keep the rhythm, the sky keeps the melody." You can't help but smile, imagining the plaza full of people, each movement tethered to the constellations like cosmic choreography. Off to one side, a quirky detail catches your eye, a carved stone block with small holes drilled in its top. The elder explains it's a whistle stone, placed so the wind could pass through and create a low, haunting tone during certain seasons. He laughs softly. Imagine trying to barter for maize with that sound in your ear. You wander toward one of the surrounding temples, noting the carved reliefs of jaguars, serpents, and a figure with a skirt of stars. Historians still debate whether these star-skirted figures represent specific deities, personifications of celestial events, or legendary mortals who crossed into myth. The girl kneels to touch one carving, her fingers pausing over the stars. "She walked between the constellations," she murmurs, "and came back with advice no one expected." The elder motions for you both to sit on the nearest bench. The stone is cool, grounding. He begins to speak in that tone he reserves for half memory, half theory. "Some nights, when the moon was a sliver and the air smelled of rain, they say dancers wore headdresses strung with tiny mirrors. The firelight caught those mirrors, and the plaza became a lake of moving stars. Outsiders thought it was magic. Insiders thought it was rehearsal for journeys no feet could make." You lean back, looking up at the real stars, feeling the space fold around you. The plaza seems to hum, not with sound, but with the sense that countless steps have polished its surface into an instrument. Somewhere above, the constellations keep their own time, patient and unhurried. The hour folds itself thinner until even the crickets decide to speak in italics. You count the plaza's breaths with the girl, in on the lake-cool air, out on the warm scent of old stone. Above, the sky loosens one star at a time, as if a careful hand is plucking beads from a thread and tucking them into a pocket for safekeeping. The elder points with his chin, not a finger, never a finger, to the east, where the darkness has traded its black for a deep, thinking blue. "Not long," he says, and the plaza seems to nod, every slab balancing the idea of dawn without letting it spill. You stand and let your souls relearn the grid. The circular dance ground keeps its poise. Even empty, it knows what to do with footsteps. The girl moves to the rim and closes her eyes like a person listening for a door one room away. "They're tidying," she says, meaning the stars, and you have the sudden affectionate image of constellations straightening their edges and smoothing their robes before the sun checks the mirror. Your laugh is small, the kind you keep on a leash. A steady fact arrives in the hush and sits down beside you. Across Mesoamerica, priest astronomers watch the morning star with dedicated attention, timing songs, processions, and warnings to its first light before sunrise. In central Mexico, this bright planet could be a herald of ceremony or a caution sign pointing toward difficult days. Tonight, it's a hinge. The plaza has arranged itself for the turn. You drift toward the wall where the stairway of faded red lines climbs into plaster. Its steps look slightly brighter now, not because the paint has improved, but because the darkness behind it has stopped insisting. The elder lays his staff lightly against the wall at waist height. "Stand here," he tells you, "where the old singer stood." You obey. Your shadow leans into the climb, then thinks better of it, and returns to your ankles. From the alley, two attendants appear with baskets covered in cloth. They set them on the bench, fold back the fabric, and you catch a quiet banquet of simple things. Maize cakes wrapped in leaves, cups of atole, a handful of salted squash seeds. The elder accepts a cup and offers you another. "The planet respects breakfast," he says gravely. You sip. It tastes like warm patience. The girl declines with a smile. "I need my hands." You resist offering to hold the sky. This room prefers jokes at half volume. A lone conch call curves through the streets, unhurried, as if reluctant to wake anyone who hasn't already decided to be awake. From somewhere near the reed wharf comes an answering tap on a slit drum. 3 beats, pause, 3 beats. The city's quiet way of counting itself present. Your shoulders lower a fraction, the body's version of raising a hand. The mosaic plaza you left earlier sends its rumor forward. A runner arrives with breath to spare and a grin that has met good news. He whispers to the elder, who nods once. "The seeds aligned," the elder translates. "The stone listened." You are aware that this could mean anything from "the acoustics behaved" to "the stars complemented the decor." You decide not to ask for peer review at this hour. A fringe tidbit makes the rounds in the soft voices. Some swear that on certain dawns, Venus sends a faint cold through the skin a few breaths before it rises, like the touch of river shade. Tonight, your forearms lift their quiet fur even before the air chills. Is that suggestion, breeze, or planetary etiquette? Historians still argue whether reports like these record-trained sensitivity, poetic tradition, or wishful thinking dressed for ceremony. Your body apparently has subscribed to all 3 newsletters. The girl climbs the low platform by the wall and faces east. She does not raise her arms or widen her stance. She stands as if about to answer a sensible question. The elder takes his place a step behind and to the left, staff grounded, eyes half-lidded, the long blink of someone measuring light at the edges. You join them at the base, where the first line of the stair drawing meets your feet. A vendor pushing a cart appears at the corner, sees the gathering, and reverses course with the stealth of a cat pretending it always meant to go that way. Your grin arrives before you can stop it. The girl's mouth twitches. Even dawn accepts outtakes. The sky passes that difficult shade between ink and slate, and then, without confetti, begins to harbor color. You notice it first on the temple's upper edges, a thread of gray loosening to violet, then to the faintest bruise of rose. Over the lake, a brightening smudge refuses to commit. It's the sort of hesitation you recognize from friends deciding whether to leave a party. A mainstream correction taps your shoulder politely. Despite the drama artists give it, Venus does not dawdle once it chooses an entrance. It rises decisively, often when the sun is still a rumor. The elder murmurs the same thought in a different uniform. When the star steps, it steps. The plaza knows. People drift in by 2s and 3s. Not a crowd, not yet, but enough to give the space a heartbeat you can lean on. A woman settles a child against her hip. A man adjusts a shawl around his shoulders and passes a folded paper banner to the person at his side. No one speaks loudly. Tenochtitlan is excellent at volume control. A small, sweet absurdity drops by for a visit. A Xoloitzkintli, one of the city's sleek, warm dogs, pads into the center, sits, and considers the sky with the grave attention of a philosopher denied a chair. A boy hurries out, whispers bribery into a palm, and the dog accepts a maize crumb with saintly dignity before relocating exactly 3 steps away. The plaza smiles without losing count. Your eyes sting for a breath, the way they do when a wind arrives without the courtesy of footsteps. You blink, and the line of rooftops sharpens. Just above it, nailed to blue with the confidence of a firstborn star, a spear of brightness pierces the thinning dark. You don't need anyone to name it. The word rises inside you the way light rises outside. Venus. Every chin lifts a slow degree. The girl's shoulders flow back and down, the motion of someone who has been handed good news she intends to handle carefully. The elder inclines his head as if to a guest whose reputation preceded them and did not disappoint. The conch sounds once, not a shout, more a statement of attendance, present. The moment has 2 voices. One speaks astronomy. A planet reflecting the sun, backlighting the morning, falling precisely where tables and practice said it would. The other speaks ceremony. A sign that the day's road has opened, that the errands of rain and market and memory may proceed under a watched sky. Historians still argue whether Venus was feared more than loved, whether priests framed its risings as danger or appointment. Standing here, you hear a third tone. Readiness. The girl lifts the clay spiral, catches the first shard of light on its edge, and turns it the smallest fraction. The bright point seems, impossibly, to answer by sharpening. You know it is your breath doing the sharpening, your pupils, your wish to be useful, and you also know how to let both explanations stand in the same room without stepping on each other's toes. The plaza is full of that kind of choreography. A breeze crates itself through the causeways and arrives with the smell of wet reeds and clean stone, morning's business card. The wall's painted stair holds steady, shadows gather in its handholds as if to assist tiny painted feet. You sense the city rising in layers, cooks lighting coals, boatmen untying knots, scribes flexing their fingers, guards rolling their shoulders to loosen the night from them. Daylight will insist. The stars, calm as librarians, begin to shelve themselves. A last, gentle comedy. The same dog returns, sits in a new, mathematically equivalent spot, and sighs in a register that suggests long familiarity with celestial scheduling. The boy scratches his head exactly once, a universal sign for, "We have both done well." You let out a breath and watch it blanch in the cool air before it joins the morning. The elder speaks as the light lifts a degree. "We will go below again," he says, not as a command, but as a continuation. "The moon keeps a ledger. It will want today's line." The girl steps down from the platform, eyes brighter than any lamp you have kept company with tonight. "Bring what you noticed," she tells you. "Leave what tried to hurry." The stars fade politely, one bead at a time, and the sky opens its wider pocket today. Venus holds for a moment longer, as if checking that everyone has their cloak and cup and sense of humor, then accepts the sun's approach and becomes the sort of brightness you carry behind your eyes instead of above your head. You look once more at the stair drawing. It seems both shallower and steeper now, which feels exactly right. Somewhere in the city, a flute decides to practice a hopeful scale. Somewhere closer, water takes the shape of morning and begins to behave like tea. You set your cup on the bench, flex your fingers, and follow the girl and the elder toward the passage that will turn dawn into a lesson the moon can read. The elder leads you down the narrow stair that smells faintly of dust and river light. The steps, uneven yet confident, remember every procession they've carried, priests balancing bowls of fire, messengers with bundles of paper, children told to walk softly. The air's cooler here, holding the night a little longer than the plaza above. Somewhere below, water speaks in syllables too round to be words. You pass walls where plaster is cracked into maps no cartographer could draw, a geography of age. The girl touches one gently as she walks, her fingers moving as if she's taking its pulse. "Still steady," she says, and you don't ask what she's measuring. The elder glances back with a half smile, the kind that trusts you'll learn by staying close, not by questioning too soon. A bend in the passage reveals a chamber lit by bowls of oil, their flames leaning slightly in the same direction as if listening. The room's center is marked by a low, square platform, its surface inlaid with shells, obsidian, and pale stones shaped like phases of the moon. You notice the order: dark crescents and bright discs, curling in a spiral toward the middle. The elder steps to its edge, staff resting lightly on the floor. "This is where the moon keeps its ledger," he says, voice soft but carrying. "Each day, a mark. Each mark, a memory of what stood under its light." He gestures for you to come closer. The girl has already moved to one side, unrolling a small bundle of reed paper. She dips a brush into black pigment and waits. He nods toward you. "Tell it," he says simply. You realize he means the morning, the stillness, the breath before Venus, the plaza's gentle readiness. You speak in a low voice, describing what you saw and what you felt, not worrying about precision, letting the rhythm carry it. The girl's brush moves in small arcs, recording shapes you don't recognize but trust. A soft, factual note drifts through your mind. In many Mesoamerican traditions, lunar records were more than calendars. They were spiritual registers, where events were tied to celestial patterns for guidance and remembrance. Some were purely symbolic, others deeply tied to ritual cycles. This ledger is both, its surface a patient mosaic of nights and dawns. When you finish, the girl adds a final stroke, then sets the paper aside to dry. She wipes her hands on a cloth, then folds it neatly. "It's there now," she says. "The moon will know." The elder inclines his head, satisfied, and turns toward a narrow arch on the far wall. You follow into a corridor that feels like it's been carved directly from quiet itself. The ceiling lowers, the air thickens with the scent of clay, and ahead you catch a glow not from flame but from stone, a slab of translucent alabaster set into the wall, catching what little light seeps from a shaft above. In its milky surface, you see faint shifting patterns, like clouds deciding whether to become something. The elder rests a palm against it. "Here the city listens back," he says. "When we send the moon our lines, it answers in its own way." He steps aside so you can feel the stone's coolness. Under your hand, there's a suggestion of vibration, the smallest hum, or perhaps it's just your pulse returning after a long climb and longer dawn. The girl stands at your other side, eyes closed, as if the alabaster is telling her something in a language she's still learning. The elder does not rush her. The chamber holds its breath with her until she opens her eyes and smiles, the kind of smile that doesn't explain itself. You turn back toward the stairs. Above, the city will already be folding itself into the day, traders opening stalls, canoes cutting the lake's skin, children chasing each other through alleys still smelling of last night's cooking. Venus will fade, but its visit is marked, stored in the moon's ledger, stitched into the city's quiet memory. At the stair's base, the elder pauses. "You'll walk the plaza again," he says, "and it will seem the same. That's the trick." The girl laughs softly. "It's not." You climb into the light, feeling the weight and lift of the morning together, as if you've been given something to carry that somehow makes you lighter. The steps you take back into the plaza feel slower now, not because the stones have grown heavier, but because your mind is still half beneath the earth, where the moon keeps its ledger and the alabaster hums. The morning light folds around you in softer layers. Sounds arrive muted, a distant vendor calling out his wares, the gentle splash of a paddle, the faint chime of wind touching metal bells strung in a doorway. The elder's words still linger, mixing with the girl's quiet laughter. You picture the spiral of moon phases on the inlaid platform, each piece a memory, each memory a thread in a much larger weaving. Somewhere, far above this city, the moon moves on, carrying your words with it, tucking them into its private night. A breeze slips through the plaza, cool and unhurried, brushing the edges of your tunic. It smells faintly of maize and lake water. The sounds stretch out like a cat in the sun, and even the shadows seem less eager to hide. If you let your eyes close now, you can still feel the stone's coolness against your palm, still hear the quiet, "It's there now," spoken without urgency, without doubt. You can imagine the ledger filling across the nights to come, each mark a pulse in the city's hidden rhythm. The crowd thins, footsteps moving away, until the plaza feels as it did before dawn, patient, expectant, but now tinged with a warmth you can't quite name. You take one last look at the emptying space, then turn toward the quiet of your own rest, carrying with you a story that will not fade easily, no matter how many mornings rise above it.